people came. So I left everybody else back in LA in the shul. And we're delighted to have all of you here. I want to introduce just a few people, and so that we all know who we are. A few words of welcome, and we're going to take some pictures. Yeah? And then lots of you I know have other events and things to come to. So the inspiration for this, the energy and the power, comes from three wonderful people who were members of Valley Beth Shalom. Evie Waterman, who was the first sort of chair of AIPAC in the Valley, when there was only a handful of people who came to a Valley dinner, and Stan Zicklin, who took it over and built it to something very substantial, but the genius who gave us 1,100 people at the Hilton and hundreds and hundreds. Our area, our region, is the most powerful delegation in the entire conference, is this woman, Donna Beth. Been blessed with an extraordinary AIPAC staff, and there's a group of people. What happens is they come, they work for us, and they get pregnant. So Oren, I want you to listen very carefully. Elliot Brent, of course, is the sort of big chairperson of the whole thing, and we're so glad. Elliot's supposed to stop in, and if you see him, give him a hug. He's running around working so hard because the Southern Pacific region of the whole program is the biggest area, biggest region of the country. Oren Lazar is the Valley Director. Thank you so much. A couple of other folks that are with us. My old friend Larry Greenfield, we're all camper friends and school friends, and is now the president of the Jewish Institute for National Security. So we're very proud of Larry's institute. And Larry's brought a guest. This is the Honorable Abel Maldonado, former Lieutenant Governor of the state of California. Mr. Maldonado, we're delighted to have you here. You're an honorary member of the synagogue. We'll send you high holiday tickets, some good ones. Thank you. Make yourself at home. I'd like to introduce the president of Valley Beth Shalom, Herb Weintraub.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's really heartwarming to see all the people from Valley Beth Shalom here this evening. You know, it's always a tug in terms of, you know, do we want to stand up on the pulpit as Rabbi does and as I do and as I champion an organization, but you know, we all know that AIPAC is so close to our hearts, and the work you heard today, just how important the work is that this organization does, and so it's a real easy ask to say, come to Policy Conference. We're thrilled that you're here. We're thrilled to be part of this, and we should have a great next day and a half, and then we'll go back home and do our work in Encino. So good to see you all here.
Now, two other very special guests have just come into the room. They have no political credentials. They're not wearing one of the very colorful banners. But you need to know that tonight, Sid and Sylvia Orell celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. For 50 years, you came to AIPAC in order to do this. Mazel tov to you, and it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. A last word, and then I hope you'll stay as long as you can and finish as much of that booze as you possibly can before you fall asleep or go off to the dinners. The important thing to remember when you come to this conference, even though it's so huge, and it wasn't always this big, this is quite remarkable and quite impressive. The remarkable thing, and as you've heard over and over again from the testimonials that they've broadcast on the screen, is that politics, particularly the way it's practiced in the United States, is the art of building close personal relationships. And those close personal relationships are, in the end, what makes every bit of the difference. What makes every bit of the difference. The most powerful story about this, you all know, it took place 64 years ago, about 8 blocks from here. The Truman administration voted for the partition of Palestine in November of 1947. But by the spring of 1948, President Truman changed his mind. And he decided that he would not recognize the State of Israel. And he changed his mind for a number of reasons, not least of which is that his State Department told him that this was the more prudent place for America's interests in the Middle East. And his Secretary of State, who was the revered General George Marshall, of the Marshall Plan, who was the most famous political figure in the country, told him that if he recognized Israel, Marshall would resign and campaign against him in the next election. And so Truman made up his mind. Come on in, we'll take a picture in just 1 second. I got to tell a great story. Truman made up his mind, and Truman was not the man to ever change his mind. This man was hard as stone. And Truman refused to see anybody who tried to change his mind. And that included the majority leader of the Senate, who came to talk to him, and he wouldn't see him. That included the most powerful rabbis in the country, Abba Hillel Silver of Cleveland, Ohio, whom Truman affectionately called that goddamn rabbi. Stephen S. Weiss, they couldn't get in to see him. Nobody could get in to see him. The leadership of the Zionist movement couldn't get in to see him. And finally, the only person who could get in to see him was Eddie Jacobson, who was his army buddy, who was his business partner when they owned a haberdashery shop in Kansas City, in Independence, Missouri. And Eddie Jacobson sat in the anteroom of the White House waiting to see his friend. They gave him 10 minutes, thinking about what he was going to say to his friend. And he came into the Oval Office, and Truman looked in the eye and said, "Don't talk to me about Israel. I will not see anybody. I'm not changing my mind." And Jacobson said in his diaries he didn't know what to do. And then he saw that in the middle of the room there was a bust of Andrew Jackson. And he went over to that bust of Jackson and said, "You know, this man is your hero. This man, the great Democratic president, Andrew Jackson, this man is the man who shaped your political career. This is the man who embodies all the ideals you fight for and live for and dream of and die for." He said, "The man I want you to meet is my hero. It's my Andrew Jackson. You know, if you could meet Andrew Jackson, what would you do for that? All I want you to do is give him 10 minutes. Chaim Weizmann was coming the next day. And all he said was, "Give me 10 minutes with Chaim Weizmann. Because what Andrew Jackson is to you, the embodiment of all that is good to you, that's what Chaim Weizmann is to me." Weizmann came. Weizmann met with the president for 2.5 hours. And 11 minutes after the State of Israel was declared, Harry Truman recognized the State of Israel. What you need to feel when you come to this conference is that we are part of history. And history takes place one-on-one in the relationships we build with legislators, with administration officials, with political leaders, with journalists, with policymakers, and opinion shapers. It's one-on-one. And we, each one of us, has the capacity to make that difference. And the State of Israel exists. The State of Israel exists because of those one-on-one relationships. In the Megillah, which we'll read on Wednesday night at Valley Beshalom at 6:30 p.m. In the Megillah, when Esther says, "I don't want to go to the king. I'm too comfortable living in the palace. Don't ask me to become political." Mordechai says to Esther, "It's for this purpose you were put here at this moment." That's how providence works in the world. We have been put in this position. You just saw, we're 2.1% of the American population, but because of a fluke of the Electoral College, we have an enormous amount of political power. After all, the President of the United States came to this gathering this morning and gave a solemn pledge. That's quite remarkable. And on Tuesday, we'll meet all of those who are his political opponents. That's quite remarkable. It's for this purpose we've been put here, to protect and to demonstrate, to protect and to share and to celebrate the new sovereignty of the people of Israel. That's why we're here. So during the course of the conference, don't just look at the 15, 16, 17,000 people in line ahead of you. Think of us all as allies and friends who have the capacity to build these relationships. And tomorrow night, when you come to the banquets, you'll be seated with congressional leaders, you'll be seated with administration leaders, you'll be seated with ambassadors and consul generals from countries all across the world. Shake a hand, give them your card, get to know them, get their phone number. When you go home, invite them to Shabbos supper. Because that's the way this works. That's the way the world changed. You and I have been given this enormous capacity, this unbelievably rare and special capacity to shape history and protect our own people. And for all of you who have come across the country, flown red-eye flights, put up with all kinds of long lines and security, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing these moments with us. We have an opportunity to take a picture. We have a couple of photographers. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask everybody in the VBS delegation and all guests and friends to gather on that wall over there. Right? Put your arms around each other. Get real close. Pretend this is the Schwartz Bar Mitzvah. All right? Where would you rather have it?